There are financial principles that only work when practiced quietly, not because they are mystical, not because they are illegal, but because exposure weakens power. The moment certain disciplines are displayed publicly, they lose effectiveness. And that is why most people never experience real financial momentum. They talk too much, show too much, reveal too much, and expand too early. Today I will reveal 5 Jewish financial secrets that must be kept in silence, and if you misunderstand the 5th one, everything else collapses. Before we go deeper, if you are serious about building disciplined prosperity, subscribe now, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and write, "I build in silence." That declaration matters more than you think. In the Talmud, in Tractate Ta'anit, it is taught that blessing rests upon that which is hidden from the eye. This is not superstition. It is psychological truth. When resources are guarded quietly, they grow without pressure. When they are displayed, comparison begins, expectation begins, social tension begins, and tension distorts discipline. Most people sabotage themselves not because they lack intelligence, but because they seek validation before stabilization. They announce goals before achieving them. They display upgrades before securing foundation. They speak of future wealth before building present structure. And that exposure invites instability. Let me mirror something uncomfortable. You finally begin saving consistently. You finally build margin. And what is the first temptation? To signal progress. A slightly upgraded lifestyle, a visible purchase, a subtle display of improvement. Why? Because progress feels incomplete until seen. But in Proverbs it says, "The wise store up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool invites ruin." Notice the contrast. Storage versus exposure. Silence versus display. Financial growth requires incubation, and incubation cannot happen in constant public light. Secret number 1 is this: accumulate quietly. Do not announce income increases. Do not advertise financial milestones. Do not signal stability prematurely. When others perceive growth, expectations shift, requests increase, pressure expands. The silent builder compounds faster because energy remains focused on structure instead of performance. There is power in invisibility. The ego resists this because it wants recognition. But recognition weakens reinforcement. Now here is something deeper. In Kabbalah, there is the concept that energy expands where attention flows. If your attention shifts from building to appearing successful, expansion slows. Most people split their energy between construction and impression. The Jewish discipline is different. It constructs first, reveals later, if at all. That is why some people seem to suddenly succeed. It was never sudden. It was silent. Secret number 2 is guarded plans. In Pirkei Avot it says, "Make for yourself a teacher and acquire for yourself a friend." Notice it does not say broadcast your strategy publicly. There is a difference between counsel and exposure. Share plans only with those who sharpen you, not those who dilute you. When goals are exposed too widely, opinions multiply, doubt spreads, discouragement enters subtly, silence protects momentum. Most dreams die in conversation, not in action. Let me ask you something. How many times have you spoken about a financial goal passionately, only to lose energy weeks later? Talking gives the illusion of progress. Action builds real progress. Silence forces execution because there is nothing to perform, only work to complete. Secret number 3 is controlled lifestyle expansion. This one destroys most people. Income increases and lifestyle immediately follows. But the Talmud in Pesukim teaches that one should live slightly below capacity, not in deprivation, in discipline. Margin is sacred. When lifestyle expands too quickly, freedom contracts. Silent wealth is stable wealth. Loud wealth is fragile wealth. And the world encourages loud wealth constantly. Social platforms normalize constant display, but comparison accelerates consumption. Consumption erodes compounding. Here is the uncomfortable mirror again. You see peers upgrading. You feel behind. You adjust spending upward to match perceived progress. And quietly, your margin disappears. In Ecclesiastes it says, "Better a handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing wind." Tranquility comes from margin. Chasing wind comes from performance. Secret number 4 is protected generosity. This may surprise you. Giving is sacred, but public giving can distort intention. In the Talmud, there is emphasis on discreet charity. Why? Because ego corrupts purity. Financially, generosity must be structured, not emotional. If giving exceeds stability, resentment forms. Structured generosity strengthens identity. Emotional generosity weakens sustainability. Silence protects sincerity. Now stay with me carefully, because the fifth secret is the most misunderstood, and if applied incorrectly, it creates isolation instead of power. Secret number 5 is silent leverage building. While others talk about ideas, you build assets. While others announce plans, you refine skill. While others debate strategy, you execute. Ownership grows best without audience. In Deuteronomy it warns, lest your heart be lifted up. Pride interrupts process. Silent leverage protects humility. The reason these secrets must be kept in silence is not secrecy for its own sake. It is strategic containment. Just as a seed grows underground before breaking soil, financial roots strengthen invisibly before visible expansion. If you dig up the seed repeatedly to check progress, it never grows. Many people metaphorically dig up their financial seeds by exposing them too early. Now I will tell you something crucial. Silence does not mean isolation. It means selectivity. Share progress with mentors, not spectators. Share goals with builders, not doubters. Share milestones after structure is secure, not before. Now, I will show you the silent mistake that destroys compounding even when income is rising, and almost no one recognizes it until years have passed. Stay with me. The silent mistake that destroys compounding, even when income is rising, is this: visible growth without invisible reinforcement. Many people increase earnings, but they do not increase discipline. They improve cash flow, but they do not strengthen containment. And because containment does not expand alongside income, financial pressure eventually returns at a higher level. This is why you see individuals earning far more than they did 5 years ago, yet feeling equally anxious. Income changed, structure did not. And structure always wins in the long term. In the Talmud, there is repeated emphasis on preparation before expansion. The sages did not separate blessing from responsibility. They understood that unmanaged increase becomes instability. When people cross certain income thresholds, they assume the hard part is over. In reality, the hard part is beginning, because now ego becomes a factor. Comparison becomes louder. Expectations increase. Social circles shift, and subtle pressure begins to expand lifestyle in ways that feel justified but are structurally premature. Let me mirror something deeply uncomfortable. Imagine someone who earns $60,000 a year with modest expenses and builds slow, steady savings. Then they begin earning $120,000. What often happens? Larger home, higher car payment, more dining, better vacations, expanded subscriptions, more "I deserve this." On the surface, this looks like success. Underneath, margin compresses, and compressed margin creates silent fragility. If income slows, anxiety spikes. If opportunity appears, liquidity is limited. If crisis hits, flexibility disappears. Growth was visible, reinforcement was absent. The Jewish discipline rejects premature expansion. In Proverbs it says, "Through wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established." Built and established are not the same. Building is earning, establishing is structuring. If you build without establishing, the structure eventually shakes. Most people celebrate building and neglect establishing, and because celebration is louder than reinforcement, they drift slowly back toward pressure. Now here is something most people never admit openly. Lifestyle expansion feels like proof of progress. When others can see your upgrade, you feel validated. Silence feels empty by comparison, but compounding requires emotional maturity. In Kabbalah, there is the concept of constriction preceding revelation. True expansion happens after containment strengthens. If you reveal progress before reinforcing foundation, the system destabilizes. There is another layer to this silent mistake. When income rises, time often becomes more demanding. Higher responsibility, longer hours, greater cognitive load. And because mental energy decreases, discipline weakens, small tracking habits disappear, monthly reviews become irregular, allocation becomes flexible instead of firm, and slowly, without dramatic failure, structural erosion begins. It is never a single catastrophic decision. It is accumulated micro-compromise. In Ecclesiastes it says, "Dead flies make the perfumer's ointment give off a foul odor." Small things ruin great potential. In financial life, small relaxations ruin large gains. Compounding is mathematical, but discipline is behavioral. If behavior weakens, mathematics cannot rescue you. Let me ask you something honest. If your income doubled tomorrow, would your discipline double? Or would your spending confidence double? That question reveals trajectory, because the Jewish financial mindset teaches that responsibility scales faster than consumption. If consumption scales faster than responsibility, the foundation cracks quietly. Now we go deeper. Why do people struggle to reinforce structure during growth? Because scarcity taught them survival, but abundance tests their restraint. When resources feel limited, caution feels natural. When resources expand, caution feels unnecessary. That psychological shift is dangerous. In Deuteronomy it warns, "Lest you eat and be satisfied and forget." Forget what? Forget discipline. Forget humility. Forget the process that built the base. And this is where silence becomes strategic power. When you do not signal growth publicly, you reduce external pressure. You are not trying to maintain image. You are not performing success. You are strengthening infrastructure. Silence removes social expectations, and social expectations are expensive. Let me tell you about a pattern I have seen repeatedly. Someone builds financial stability quietly. They cross a milestone. Friends notice subtle changes. Invitations increase. Requests appear. Opportunities that require visible spending arise. The individual feels compelled to match perception, and suddenly, silent compounding becomes visible consumption. Years later, they wonder why growth stalled. It stalled because reinforcement stopped. The Jewish financial secret here is simple but difficult. Allow income to rise without allowing lifestyle to mirror it immediately. Extend the silent phase longer than feels comfortable. Let surplus accumulate beyond the milestone. Build a second layer of buffer, then a third. Then begin intentional expansion, controlled, structured, not reactive. In the Talmud, wisdom is often described as foresight, seeing consequences before they arrive. Foresight in financial growth means anticipating the temptation of visible expansion. It means deciding in advance how surplus will be allocated before emotion attaches to it. It means defining percentages, not improvising. There is another silent dimension to compounding that most ignore: attention discipline. When income rises, distractions multiply. New options, new experiences, new temptations. If attention scatters, strategic focus weakens. Compounding requires focus. In Kabbalah, intention directs energy. In finance, focus directs capital. Now here is the deeper warning. Some people practice silence externally but expand ego internally. They say nothing publicly but privately begin identifying with their progress. Pride subtly replaces humility, and pride distorts risk perception. When pride enters, caution leaves. That is why humility must scale with income. In the Talmud, humility is praised not as weakness, but as preservation. You must ask yourself, am I strengthening my vessel as income grows, or am I decorating it prematurely? Decoration without reinforcement invites fracture. The silent mistake that destroys compounding is assuming that growth momentum will continue automatically. It will not. Momentum must be protected, and protection requires systems, not feelings. Monthly review, fixed allocation percentages, predefined reinvestment strategy, structured generosity, guarded lifestyle expansion. So, the final layer, the psychological discipline that ensures your financial silence becomes permanent advantage instead of temporary restraint. The psychological discipline that ensures your financial silence becomes permanent advantage is internal containment, not just of money, of emotion, of ego, of urgency. Most people believe financial growth is primarily mathematical. It is not. It is emotional management over long periods of time. And silence is not merely about what you say publicly, it is about what you allow yourself to feel privately. When income increases and stability begins forming, a subtle emotional shift occurs. Relief appears, then pride, then comparison, then expansion pressure. If you do not manage this sequence consciously, you will repeat the same cycle at a higher level. In the Talmud, in Tractate Avot, it is said, "Who is strong? One who conquers his impulse." Most people interpret impulse only as spending temptation, but impulse includes ego validation, desire for recognition, and the need to signal success. The reason silence protects wealth is because it delays ego activation. When no one knows your financial position, there is no need to defend it, display it, or maintain it. Silence creates psychological neutrality, and neutrality preserves discipline. Now let me go deeper into something few understand. Compounding requires boredom tolerance. Yes, boredom. Real wealth building is repetitive. Allocation, review, restraint, reinforcement. It is not dramatic. It is not cinematic. It does not produce constant adrenaline. And because modern culture is addicted to stimulation, people unconsciously sabotage stable progress in search of emotional intensity. They upgrade prematurely, they invest impulsively, they change strategy too quickly. Why? Because quiet growth feels slow. In Ecclesiastes it says, "Better the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit." Patience in spirit is what protects compounding. Pride in spirit accelerates collapse. Let me mirror a psychological pattern clearly. You begin accumulating surplus quietly. You build reserves. You track consistently. Progress feels stable. Then one day you compare yourself to someone publicly displaying success. Suddenly your silent growth feels small. Your mind whispers, "You are behind." That whisper is dangerous, because comparison shifts focus from structure to image, and image is expensive. In Kabbalah, desire without boundary creates chaos. Boundary is gevura, disciplined strength. Without boundary, desire expands infinitely. Financially, this means if you do not define your own pace of growth, external stimuli will define it for you, and external pace rarely aligns with sustainable structure. Now here is a difficult truth. Some people reach moderate stability and then unconsciously sabotage it because stability feels unfamiliar. They grew up in financial unpredictability. Chaos feels normal. Calm feels strange. So when things become stable, they introduce risk or expansion prematurely to recreate emotional intensity. This pattern is rarely discussed, but it is common. The Jewish financial mindset confronts this directly. Stability is not boring. Stability is sacred. Margin is not dull. Margin is power. The silence of compounding is not emptiness. It is incubation. In the Talmud, wisdom is often described as seeing long-term consequences. Most people see immediate outcomes. Few see decade outcomes. When you operate in silence, you think in decades. When you operate in display, you think in months. Now let us talk about the invisible enemy of silent growth, narrative drift. Narrative drift happens when your internal story changes subtly. At first, your story is, "I am building foundation." Then it becomes, "I am doing well." Then, "I deserve more comfort." Then, "I should enjoy this now." Then, "I can always rebuild if needed." That drift is gradual, but it transforms disciplined builder into relaxed spender without dramatic warning. In Deuteronomy it warns repeatedly not to forget the process that created strength. Forgetting does not mean losing memory. It means losing respect for the discipline that built your stability. So how do you prevent narrative drift? You institutionalize humility. Humility does not mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking long-term instead of short-term. It means assuming that market conditions change. It means preparing for volatility before it arrives. It means treating surplus as responsibility, not indulgence. Another layer of silence is strategic information control. Do not reveal full financial position publicly. Why? Because external expectations distort internal judgment. If people believe you are doing well, they adjust how they interact with you. Invitations shift. Requests increase. Financial assumptions form. and responding to those assumptions costs energy. Energy is capital. Protect your energy as you protect your money. Now I want you to imagine two individuals over 10 years. Both increase income gradually. One expands lifestyle with each milestone. The other maintains structure quietly, allowing surplus to accumulate disproportionately relative to visible consumption. After a decade, the second individual possesses flexibility the first cannot imagine, not because income was dramatically higher, but because reinforcement outpaced expansion. This is the compounding silence principle. Let me give you a practical reinforcement framework. When income increases, implement a delay rule. For 6 to 12 months after any raise or income jump, maintain previous lifestyle. Allocate the entire difference to reserve, investment, or skill development. This does two things. It strengthens the vessel dramatically, and it trains the mind not to equate income with immediate consumption. In Proverbs it says, "The prudent give thought to their steps." Thought precedes action. Decision precedes desire. Structure precedes comfort. The deeper you internalize this, the more powerful your silence becomes. Because silence is not hiding. Silence is preparation. Get ready. I will reveal the silent wealth. Why those who speak least about money often control the most of it, and how to adopt that posture without becoming isolated or fearful. The ultimate paradox of silent wealth is this. Those who speak least about money often control the most of it. Not because they are secretive by nature, not because they are hiding something, but because their focus is internal reinforcement, not external validation. When attention is not divided between construction and performance, compounding accelerates. The world trains people to announce success early, but early announcement invites early pressure, and pressure distorts patience. In the Talmud, there is an idea repeated across different teachings, that blessing rests where modesty resides. Modesty is not weakness, it is containment. It is refusal to expose what is still strengthening. Financial modesty protects momentum. When others do not know your exact position, you are free from comparison games. You are free from expectation burdens. You are free from subtle social competition. And that freedom allows strategic clarity. Now understand something important. Silent wealth is not about isolation. It is about selective disclosure. You do not withdraw from community. You choose your counsel carefully. In Pirkei Avot it says, "Make for yourself a teacher and acquire for yourself a friend." That is guidance, not broadcasting. Share financial strategy only with those who sharpen your thinking, not those who react emotionally, not those who measure worth by visible spending. The paradox deepens here. When you speak less about money, you think more about structure. When you think more about structure, you act more deliberately. And when you act deliberately, volatility decreases. Silence creates mental space. Mental space creates foresight. Foresight strengthens position. Let me mirror something quietly powerful. Have you ever noticed that the loudest displays of wealth often fade? New cars replaced every year, constant upgrades, endless travel posts, public declarations of success. These are not necessarily signs of stability. Often they are signs of performance. And performance is expensive. Performance requires maintenance. Maintenance drains compounding. In Ecclesiastes it says, "All the toil of man is for his mouth, yet the appetite is not satisfied." When consumption becomes performance, satisfaction never arrives. There is always a higher benchmark. Silent wealth escapes that cycle because its benchmark is internal strength, not external comparison. Now let us confront the final psychological tension. Some people fear that if they remain silent about progress, they will not feel rewarded. They equate visibility with achievement. But true achievement is not applause, it is autonomy. When margin grows quietly, options multiply. When options multiply, pressure decreases. That is reward. And that reward does not require audience. In Kabbalah, the idea of hidden light appears, power that exists before revelation. Financial silence is hidden light. It is growth that has not yet demanded attention. And hidden light is often stronger because it is undisturbed. There is another danger I must warn you about. Silence should never become secrecy rooted in fear. Fear-based secrecy isolates. Strength-based silence protects. The difference is intention. If you hide because you fear judgment, you remain reactive. If you remain quiet because you are focused on structure, you are strategic. Let me give you the full framework one last time so it becomes anchored in your thinking. Accumulate quietly. Guard your plans selectively. Control lifestyle expansion beyond comfort. Structure generosity wisely. Build leverage without audience. Reinforce discipline as income grows. Protect humility as position strengthens. These are not short-term tactics. They are lifelong posture. Imagine yourself 10 years from now having followed this discipline consistently. Not perfectly, consistently. Income increased gradually. Lifestyle remained proportionate. Margin widened steadily. Investments accumulated quietly. Skills deepened. Leverage expanded. Anxiety decreased. You were not the loudest, but you were stable, not flashy, but flexible, not constantly upgrading, but constantly strengthening. That is silent power. Now, contrast that with the alternative. Income rises, lifestyle mirrors it instantly, social display expands, commitments multiply, margin compresses, anxiety returns, years pass. Progress feels smaller than expected, not because earning failed, but because reinforcement failed. The difference between these two paths is not luck, it is silence. In Deuteronomy, it warns again and again not to let success inflate the heart. Inflated heart leads to inflated risk. Inflated risk leads to fragile structure. Humility preserves compounding. Now I want you to make a decision consciously. Are you building for visibility or for durability? Visibility is immediate. Durability is quiet. Visibility impresses. Durability liberates. Write this in the comments now. I grow quietly and deliberately. This sentence reinforces posture. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you are serious about disciplined prosperity. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from and whether you are currently in the building phase or the reinforcement phase. Share this message with someone who confuses loud success with stable success. And like this teaching so silent discipline spreads further than noise ever could. May your wealth strengthen in hidden places before it appears in visible ones. May your discipline outpace your desire. May your margin widen beyond expectation. May your humility protect your expansion. May your silence multiply your leverage. May your prosperity be durable, not dramatic. May your future self thank you for every quiet decision you make today. Shalom.